you know, asking her, like, do you even know why the palace walls were created? And it's because they were hunted and basically killed. Okay, so this episode opens with a flashback. So Mal and Alina, they are back at the orphanage. And you had the kid that was trying to beat up Mal. He's now talking to the younger children. And he's talking about how they come to the orphanage to test the kids to see who's Grisha. And if you are, then you get to go and live in this palace. And you have all this food. And he, in his mind, thinks that they live this, you know, fabulous life. I guess by comparison, you know, them living in an orphanage. And so, the woman came in and said that they have visitors. And so they actually had people were coming in that day to test the kids to see who is Grisha. And so as they were, you know, distracted, as the woman was distracted as the kids were filing out of, it looked like the dining hall, Alina grabbed Mal and they ran out into the field and they hid. And so Mal ends up asking her, you know, don't you want to find out whether or not you're Grisha? And she basically said that not if we can't go together.
Don't you want to know if you're Grisha?
Not if we can't go together.
And so neither of them got tested that day. Okay, now the ship is now back at West Ravka. They are now trying to assess the damage and trying to see who's alive, who's dead, and they're, you know, they've called the healer to try to help who they can. Mal has already been taken to I guess their triage, and he's now being looked after by the medical staff. And the healer is now over trying to help Alina. She saw that she had a broken collarbone, so she's now trying to mend her collarbone. And while she's doing this, Zoya, who's now, you know, she's kind of directing people what to do. She ends up telling the healer, like, once you're done, the general want to see her.
Bring her to the general's tent. Who?
So they flash to Kaz and Inej, and of course she is trying to figure out, like, how is he going to pull this off. She's telling him that they're never going to be able to find a way through the fold by sunrise. They need more time. You know, we had a week, and now he wants this done by, you know, by sunrise tomorrow.
It was one thing when we had at least a week to find a way across the fold, but sunrise, we have to say no.
Oh, and he's rushing, trying to, you know, rack his brain to figure out how they're going to make this happen. And she's saying that, you know, you shouldn't go. And then she's saying that I can't go. And then she ends up showing him this tattoo that she has on her wrist.
We can't go.
Can't we?
I can't go.
And he's saying that he's going to figure things out. She's telling him that, you know, you're not ready. And she know how he gets. And she's like, I know when you don't have a plan and when you don't have things figured out. And, he's basically saying that he's going to, if he doesn't figure it out, then nobody's going. And she was like, and if you do, then he ends up, and if you do and I can't go, then he's basically like, well, then you have to stay here.
If I can't crack this, none of us are going anywhere.
And if you do?
Then maybe you stay here.
So they had a little tiff. She was not happy about that. And she left. And of course he knew he was wrong. So he went to apologize. But by then she had already disappeared. So she moves that quick. So Alina has now been taken into the tent to meet with the general. There's already a group there. And he, you know, starts asking her questions. And he asked her, what is she? And she tells him that she's a cartographer and she does the maps. And people, you know, some people started laughing and she was confused, like, what? And then he asked her again and she said the same thing, like, I'm a map maker. And he starts asking people, you know, what they saw, you know, because some of the survivors were able, you know, they witnessed, to be able to say what they witnessed. And they basically reiterated the same story that Alexi told about the light and her and, you know, the whole thing. And then he asked her about being tested. And of course, we know from the flashback that she never got tested. And so he decides that this is when it's going to happen. And now it's flashing between this and Mal. Mal is still being treated. He finally comes to. He's, you know, obviously asking about Alina. The guy that's, you know, helping mend his leg is telling him that, you know, they've taken her to meet with the general and they think that she might be a sun summoner. That she might be and he's saying that no, she's not. And he's going to, you know, to help her because he feels like if she's not, then they're going to kill her. He don't know what's going to happen, but he's just trying to get there to help his friend. And at this time, the general has already walked over to her, and he had put this thing on his finger that has like a point to it, and he ends up cutting into her skin, and this beam of light comes out. And of course, everybody, even she, she's shocked because again, she didn't know. Everybody in the tent is shocked, and then you go outside the tent where Maul is, and they're all walking towards the tent. So now the entire camp can see this light coming from the tent, and he knew it was her. And so he's confused, she's confused, and everybody's kind of standing around in astonishment. So we flash back to the bar. Kaz is still in his office trying to figure out how they're going to get through the fold. But Rollins paid him a visit, rough him up a bit, and basically tells him that he's going to decline the offer, that he is going to tell Dresden that he can't do it, and that Rollins is going to take over for him.
You can do nothing. Walk away from it. I'll tell Dresden I'm taking over for you.
Of course, Kaz is like, no, I'm not going to do that. But then, of course, he, did the same thing. You're either going to walk away, or I'm going to cave your skull in and dump you in the river. And he pretty much got up. He felt like he'd made his point, Rollins, and he got up and he left. Like, we have an understanding, and it is what it is. So they flash downstairs. So downstairs, Inez and Jesper, they're at the bar. Inez is basically saying that, he doesn't have a way through.
He doesn't have a way across the fold, and we both know it.
I bet he'll figure it out.
It's not going to work. And he has some sort of, it seems like it's personal. It seems like he has some sort of vendetta against Rollins.
It's more than that. I've seen the way Kaz looks when he says Packer's name. Kaz wants revenge.
And Jesper is like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And next you know, she's passed a message and she has to go. So she left. As she was leaving, I guess they didn't see each other, Kaz was coming down. And of course he looked roughed up, and of course Jesper is asking him if he's okay. He's saying no. And he told him that that someone is trying to scare him off the job. And of course Jesper was like, who? And Kaz ended up saying, you know who. And then Jesper ends up saying, do you think he remembers you?
Did he remember you?
If he had, I'd be dead.
So while he was trying to make Inez seem like she was loose, like she wasn't reading things right, like she felt like there was something personal against some personal vendetta that Kaz has against Rollins. Jesper is like, well, no, I don't think that's it. Now you hear it is in fact the truth. They have a history. And that made more sense because prior to Rollins leaving, after he had roughed Kaz up, Kaz ends up saying, have we ever made a deal before?
Have we ever made a deal before?
You and me? Nah.
Asking Rollins, and Rollins was like, no, if we had, then you would know better, or you would be dead. So I was like, now that makes sense that, yeah, there is a history between Rollins. It's just at this point, Rollins hasn't figured out who Kaz really is. And he's like scanning the room because he felt like there's something, something's off or something's not clicking. And so he zeroes in on this woman who's working the table. She's counting the money. And it was something about the way she counted the money that drew his attention. So he ends up having one of his guys go and get her and bring her to the office. So of course the first thing she says is, I'm not stealing. And then he ends up asking her where she's from, and she's saying that she's from West Ravka. And he's saying no, because the way you count money, people from West Ravka count money from hand to hand.
West Ravkans count their money from one hand to the other.
The way she was counting money is, she had it in one hand and she was kind of like flipping through the money. He said that's how people from the East Ravka count.
But people out east who work the mines in Sikursk, they count like you do.
And so she eventually had to admit that she was from East Ravka and that her and her daughter were Grisha, and they, you know, basically escaped because they didn't want any part in whatever was going on. And he basically told her that I'm not interested in you. I'm interested in how you guys were able to cross from east to west through the fold.
No, I'm not after you. But you need to tell me how you and your daughter got through the fold unscathed and unnoticed.
And so she ends up pointing him to a guy who calls himself the conductor and an individual that they're familiar with, somebody named Poppy, who works out of a different club or bar, who hid them for a few days. So we flash to the camp, and they are taking Alina to the carriage because they want to take her to the palace to protect her. And so, of course, she doesn't want to go. She's basically like, I could just continue to do what I've been doing. There's like, well, no, because at this point, it's safer for you to go to the palace. And so, of course, she wanted to talk to Ma before leaving because she know he's going to be confused about what just happened and the fact that she just up and left. And the guy basically told her that at this point, everybody knows who you are, everybody knows what you do, and our enemies are going to be on the way. So the best thing is for us to get you to the palace, behind the palace walls, where you're going to be safe.
Every spy in the area will soon hear what you did, and our enemies will come for you. Our only chance is to get you to Osalta, behind palace walls, before you get killed. And
so they get her into the carriage, and as they were pulling off, you can kind of hear her saying, screaming to him, basically saying that she didn't know and how sorry she was and she didn't know. And he's trying to run behind the carriage, but he has an injured leg. And of course, even if he caught up with her, it wasn't going to be a whole lot that he could do. So we find out who Inez was going. She had to go and meet. So basically, it's the person who she's an indentured servant to this woman. And so it made sense that now the whole issue of showing the tattoo made sense. The tattoo is basically to show who owns her, or who she's indebted to until her debt is paid off. And so when the woman said, she knew something is going on, there was some rumblings, around the streets, and so she knows that there's something going on and that they need to cross the fold. But she, basically reminded her that you can't go unless I give you permission.
Oh yes, because you can't leave town without my permission, so if you want to leave, you must be paid in full.
And so that's why she was saying that she couldn't leave. And so the woman basically called her in to say, I need you to kill this person, this guy, tonight. And if you kill him, then consider your debt cleared and you're free to do whatever it is that you want.
Kill him.
Do this, and you are free and clear. So
she ends up seeking out Jesper, and she starts talking to Jesper, and she basically asks Jesper if he would do the deed, do the murder. And then he was like, well, why are you coming to me? And she was like, well, that I can't do it. And before she can give any specifics, Cass came around the corner and basically said that he had a job. So she disappeared, and even though he agreed to do it, at this point he doesn't have enough information to follow through, and now he's following Cass onto whatever he needs him to do.
Will you help me or not?
Like I said, of course. But
Jesper, new job.
So Alina is in the carriage. They're on their way to the palace, and of course she's talking to the guys, and one guy was telling her that, asking her, like, do you even know why the palace walls were created? And it's because they were hunted and basically killed.
do you know why the little palace has walls in the first place? Because for years, being Grisha was a death sentence.
And their hope is that because the fold was created by Grisha, that one will be able to destroy it, and that they will no longer have to be in hiding. Okay, so they continued on, and eventually they reached a roadblock in the woods. Surprise, surprise. And of course, when they got out to investigate, they were attacked. A lot of them were killed. Eventually, this man made his way to the carriage, ended up pulling her out, Alina out, and was about to kill her when the general showed up and basically cut him into 1,000,000 pieces. Now, of course, Alina is there, shocked and confused and terrified. But at the same time, she was happy to be alive. He ends up scooping her up, and they get on his horse and ride off. So, Kaz and Jesper are on their way to talk to Poppy. Now, the downside is Poppy works in a club that's in an area controlled by Rollins. So, of course, they arrived, and Jesper asked, okay, why are we at our, basically, competitor's bar?
Now, you want to tell me you're always scoping out a rival club?
And he was like, well, they're going to recognize you. And so Taz was like, Taz, I don't know why I keep calling him Mented. Kaz was like, well, that's why I brought you as a decoy.
Have a talk with an old business partner.
Bouncers will know you on sight.
That's why I brought you. Make sure they don't see me.
So eventually Alina and the general stopped, and of course, she asked him how, he was able to do what he did. And of course he was like, well, would you rather I use the sword? And, she kind of thought about it and was like, I mean, either way, the man would be just as dead, right? So, then, they started talking, and he was telling her about the plan, basically reiterating the plan of the guys in the carriers, that they, hoping that she'll be able to enter the fold and to destroy it. And of course she's saying that she doesn't want to do it.
Enter the fold. Destroy it from within. With proper training, some amplification, you could well be the
No.
And asked her why he can't do it, and he's like, he's tried, and he's a beacon for the Valkor, what they call it, the dragon, whatever things are that's flying around, and that he would just make things worse.
If I enter the fold, I'm a beacon for the Valkyrie. All I can do is make it worse.
And of course, he was saying how they, thought that they would never find, a sun summoner. And, she went on to say that, it's probably the reason you haven't found one is because they don't want to be found. It's like, who would sign up for this, basically, is what she's saying.
You want to know why you've never found someone with this power? Maybe it's because they don't want to be found.
And eventually, they continued on to the palace. Okay, so a survivor returned to camp, and of course Maul saw him and was trying to figure out, okay, what in the world is going on? He said that they were ambushed, and of course he looked injured, the guy that returned. And of course he was asking about everybody else, and he's saying that they're, some are dead, some are injured, and they're waiting for other horses to arrive. And of course he asked about Alina, and he told her that she's with the general.
Where are the others? Dead, wounded, waiting on fresh horses. Alina. She alright? She's the General Kirigan.
And him not knowing who the general is, I guess they don't really know him, his powers, his abilities. I don't know, because he was like, you only left here with one guy. So I'm assuming by that statement, he don't know that the general is more than just some guy. I'm assuming. So eventually he went to talk to his superior, and he wanted them to step in and to go find Alina to help her. Like, it should have been more than, guess who traveled with her there to protect her. And basically he told him no, that she's Grisha, and that, she's supposed to be infantry 2 or camp 2 or something to that effect. And he's like, they, let them deal with her.
Sun Summoner is Grisha. Second army. Let those fancy folk handle her.
So he wasn't going to get anywhere with the powers that be at the camp. So the next scene, you see people milling about outside the club, and Jesper, next gunshot rang out, which distracted everyone. Of course, the security that was standing outside the club went to investigate, and they gave Kaz enough time to sneak in. Of course, they're talking to Jesper like, it was that you? And of course, he's trying to play it off like, oh my goodness, did you see that? Do you know what happened? What just happened? He's like playing it off like, he don't know what the hell's going on.
You heard that too?
So Kaz ends up getting in to talk to Poppy. It's obvious that they parted on bad terms. Apparently, Poppy had a stake in the Crow Club, which is a club that Kaz owned. And somehow he got booted out, kicked out, I don't know, lost his shares, whatever the case may be. He is no longer, affiliated with that. And he's kind of salty about it.
I see you're still upset.
About you stealing my shares of the Crow Club.
And so he, they talked, and he eventually asked him about, mentioned the conductor, and by his facial expression, he could tell that he knew exactly who he was talking about. And apparently, everybody knows about this deal, right? So he ends up bringing it up, saying that, oh, you know, is this about that, you know, that deal where you're making this million Kruger to cross the fold and you'll never make it, da, 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 da.
This is about a job, isn't it? One that sends you all the way east for 1 million Kruger.
And then Kaz ends up seeing a letter with a symbol that belongs to Helena. It's the same tattoo that Inez has on her wrist. So he was like, she wrote you? And Poppy was like, yeah, she wrote me. And she was asking about the conductor as well.
Tontaline wrote you?
Just this evening, yes, you snoop. She was asking about the conductor as well.
And he was saying how he wrote him to tell him to stay away from them. And of course, Taz is like, wait a minute, you, Taz. Kaz wrote her and told her, Kaz basically said, so you wrote to the conductor? And so, of course, Poppy was like, yes. And he said, she wanted you to do that so that she could have somebody following. And so he basically said that you need to tell me who this person is, otherwise your friend is going to be killed. So Inez is, she is now dealing, there was a brief scene earlier, I mean, it wasn't even worth including a clip for, where, you know, this guy who was packing up some paperwork and she appeared, she ended up knocking him out. Okay, that was just the scene. So he's now waking up and she's tearing through the paperwork and has him tied to the chair. And, you know, she starts asking him about records for children.
Find records of the children you've sold to the brothels.
I've never sold any indentures.
He's a smuggler. And, of course, he's saying that he doesn't smuggle, you know, smuggle for Helena, or he's pretending like he doesn't know what she's talking about. And then he starts asking her, you know, when she was born and trying to figure out, like, when she may have been smuggled. And he's asking her who she's looking for. You're looking for your parents, a sibling, and then she find, you know, says that she's looking for a brother.
Who are you looking for? Your parents, a sibling?
You know, how she came to Rotterdam, but he was on a different ship and she doesn't know where he went. And he's basically saying that he doesn't know. He mentioned some other, you know, a few other people that she could ask. And she basically said that, you know, if you can't give me, you know, the information that I need, at least you can give me my freedom.
If you can't give me a lead, you can at least give me my freedom.
So this is, in fact, the person that she, you know, that Helena wanted her to kill. Kaz arrived, basically stopped her from killing this man. And now we know he is, in fact, the conductor. And so she, and this basically was saying that you would choose him over my freedom. And she's saying that what makes you think that they're mutually exclusive. So he stopped her from killing the man. And he ends up hiring the man, basically saying, I have a job for you.
Conductor, I have a job for you.
So Alina and the general arrive at the palace. You know, eventually he had, I'm assuming they knew ahead of time she would be arriving, so they had a room prepared for her. And he had some of the guards take her up to her room. And of course she asked, so what, am I a prisoner? And he basically said all of Ravka is until you and I can destroy the fold. And she was like, oh, well, no pressure.
All of Ravka is until you and I banish the fold.
So the next scene, Kaz goes to talk to Helena about Inez. So he knows that he's going to need her on this journey. And so as collateral, he ends up putting up the deed to his club, the Crow Clubs.
The Crow Club.
So they shook on it, and now they have a deal. I guess if he doesn't bring Inez back, she dies. If she runs away, he's going to lose his club, basically, at this point. And so the final scene is basically flashing back and forth between Mal and Alina. She's in the palace. It's late at night, so they're both in bed in their respective locations. And, you know, kind of flash briefly to them being, you know, kids back in the field hiding because they didn't want to get tested. And that's pretty much how this episode ends. So I am going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys later.